This is a Fox San Antonio special.
Before there were satellites, Doppler radar, and even thermometers, native cultures who lived in this region relied on their connection with the earth and the skies to explain nature's weather changes. That connection allows them to see what is virtually invisible to the rest of us.
You can see when the weather's going to change by what the creatures are doing. All of a sudden you see a whole bunch of crickets moving, and that tells me from my elders that the weather's going to change, a drastic change. Watching the migration and movement of the birds and the animals, it kind of signals us what we need to do. So that's that intuitive connection that native people have. So from the Arctic Circle all the way to the tip of Tierra del Fuego, people have an intuitiveness about, how they're supposed to live, what they're supposed to eat, and what they're supposed to do.
Science has given us another perspective about nature's extreme weather events. It started with scientists like Galileo and Copernicus, who were the first to explore the concept that the Earth orbited the Sun. Scientists in China and India discovered the Earth was tilted. These two important concepts are key in the explanation of why we have seasons. The Earth revolves around the Sun once every 8,765 hours, or 365.24 days. Since this is just a bit longer than our 365-day calendar, we catch up every 4 years using a leap year. The cycle of the seasons is caused by the position of the Earth in its orbit and its tilt towards or away from the Sun. During our winter season, the Earth is tilted away from the Sun. We get less solar energy, and so our part of the Earth is cooler. During our summer season, the Earth is tilted towards the Sun. This gives us more solar energy, and we are warmer. Spring and fall are special times of the year. The Earth's axis is parallel to the Sun, not tilted either towards or away from it. It is a time of transition between cold and hot. The timing and impact of the seasons depends on where you're located on the Earth. Regions that are close to the equator experience little, if any, seasonal change throughout the year. Regions like the mid-latitudes experience the wickedness of seasonal change the most. Jason Runyon, a meteorologist at the National Weather Service, has been researching detailed weather records that paint a picture of Mother Nature's wicked ways in the area.
We normally see our peak in severe weather during the month of May. That's when we see our most hailstorms, our most tornadoes here in south central Texas, and our most flooding, May and also during the fall time with respect to flooding. Since our records began in San Antonio back in the late 1800s, 5 of our 10 driest years have been since the mid-90s, and 6 of our 10 wettest years have been since the mid-90s. And so we're seeing a stretch in our climate with respect to precipitation during the springtime.
Stretching the climate pattern means that our change of seasons are no longer the same. We're seeing spring stretch back into the winter months.
We're also seeing that we're getting warmer. So we have this cycle like this, but the cycle's starting to tilt, and also that cycle is starting to get stretched. And when we have wet conditions and when those storms sweep across Texas that bring those heavy rainfalls, we have more water vapor sitting up there in the atmosphere for them to pick up and dump on us if it's warmer, because in warmer conditions, water evaporates more quickly, and so it's all sitting up there waiting for that storm to come, which then picks up all of that water vapor and dumps it on us.
So what makes a storm turn severe?
There's 2 ingredients that you need just for an average thunderstorm, and then 2 additional ones that you need for a storm to become severe. The 2 that you need just for an ordinary thunderstorm is you need moisture through the lower layers and the middle layers of the atmosphere, and then you need something to lift the moisture vertically up into the atmosphere and start what we call an updraft to a thunderstorm, start the cloud growing so that the raindrops, the drops in the cloud can grow and fall as rain. And the two other ingredients that take an ordinary storm and turn it severe are something called wind shear and another term called instability. Wind shear is just an increase with wind speed as you go up in the atmosphere and or a change in the direction of the wind as you go up in the atmosphere. And stability just describes once you get an updraft growing, the more unstable the atmosphere is, the more likelihood the updraft will continue to grow vertically with height and sometimes in an explosive way up into the atmosphere.
The Earth is racing towards the time that we greet spring at 67,000 miles per hour. It will happen March 20th at 5:29 in the morning. But Mother Nature's timing is out of sync. When we come back, a look at how this has turned Mother Nature wicked. It was the turn of the century, and Texas was no stranger to Mother Nature's wicked ways. A hurricane had just destroyed Galveston, leaving 8,000 dead and thousands injured with very little warning. Weather forecasting was in its beginning days with only observations and good guesses to work with. Severe storm warnings did not exist. People were left guessing about when Mother Nature would become wicked again. They didn't have to wait long. May 18th, 1902.
At 12:15 in the afternoon, Isaac Klein down in Galveston issued squall warnings for this part of Texas. And at 10 o'clock in the morning, the people of Laredo saw the first of what would be a line of thunderstorms blow up and become rather menacing in appearance and drift off towards the east. Forecasters in Corpus Christi were calling for bad weather. And they noticed around 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, the skies north of the city turned black. At 3 o'clock, Beeville noticed the skies had turned very dark and very quiet, and the people of Beeville said that that was frightening to them. And then again in Goliad, at 3:30, it went from gray skies to black almost in an instant, and it got very quiet. There were 3 tremendously loud claps of thunder, and then a number of large hailstones started to fall, and that brought people outside as well. And then they heard a rumbling kind of roar that sounded very much like a locomotive from the railroad. And a number of men not far from where we are here at Hanging Tree Antiques in downtown Goliad were sitting on a hotel front porch smoking cigars, and they just happened to be looking over and they saw the storm go right by. A priest was having Catholic education down at La Bahia across the river, and was teaching the Catholic children, the Hispanic children, their afternoon catechism. And he said that the sky turned black all of a sudden, and he excused himself and climbed up into the bell tower, and looked out over the city and over the San Antonio River. And when he came back down, they said he was ashen, and he told the parents, "Gather your children, take them home now. Something terrible is happening in Goliad."
On May 18, 1902, a massive twister touched down on the south side of the San Antonio River near Goliad at 3:35.
It came two dark clouds, one in the west and one kind of in the south, in the southeast part. And they began to come together. As they was coming together, they met in the south. And when they met in the south, my grandmother called us and told me to come out and look at the cloud. She said, "I believe it's a storm, because it's 2 clouds meeting," in which it was. And then when my daddy and mother came home, they told us that the cyclone had swept Goliad. And it was a man there at the UBF named Andrew Hunter. He wanted to go on up in town. And this man, he rode a horse. He jumped on his horse, he wouldn't listen, jumped on his horse and went up in the town. When he got up there, he said that the cyclone picked him up there in town and blowed him and his horse down at the river and dropped him in the river, and when he fell in there, it was nothing but sand. Then Mama carried me to town. That's where I seen it. When we got to town, they had done picked up all the people were just laying just like you would just strew them around on the ground. And they picked them up. They had an old tin roof, a great big building, what they call the tin roof. And they hauled those people to that big building. And they just laid them, just strung them on the floor, just like I got that carpet down there. They covered the floor just with people. And they used to have a big tree right in the center, right on the south side of where the bank is now. It is in the center of the street. And so that cyclone picked up a cob, you know, where you share corn off of, and drove it into that tree. And they just sawed that cob off and left it in that tree. And then chickens was on the street there, just like you had scalded and picked them. Just laying there dead, not a feather. Just picked them clean. I seen that myself. Oh, that was a sight to see. I hope I never see another one. I never seen so many dead people in my life.
This is the Fannin Street Methodist Church, which was at the time one of the larger African American churches in Goliad. It's been rebuilt on the site of the original church, and it was completely annihilated in the 1902 tornado. The tornado came here at about 3:30 in the afternoon, came directly across the street into the church, and almost the entire African American community was in the church at the time and was killed.
The storm claimed 114 lives, injured 230, and forever changed the lives of the people in Goliad. The peak of the tornado season is now coming a week early compared to 60 years ago. Major tornado outbreaks are becoming more common with higher numbers of tornadoes. When we come back, the dark side of Mother Nature returns. Nature has both mystified and frightened us since the beginning of time. The tornado has clearly been the most wicked of Mother Nature's outbursts. Scientists have struggled to understand why nature turns wicked. Today, we know more, but are still struggling to answer the question of why and how. Every year, about 146 tornadoes touch down right here in Texas. That makes Texas the tornado capital of the world. The month of May is when Mother Nature is the most wicked. 5 of the top 10 days with the most tornadoes are in the month of May. May 27th, 1997 brought an unusual wickedness to Texas.
There was something about the air. I went out to get the newspaper, and I had never felt that kind of humidity, that kind of heat at that time. This was 6:30 in the morning.
It's one of those days you just really remember. So much moisture in the air. You know when you can step outside and you can feel the instability? It was one of those days. You just felt like something bad could happen.
Lon Curtis, longtime storm chaser and TV meteorologist, was watching the skies that day.
I used the internet to pull up some radar. I could see in the velocity product, I could see a little couplet developing on that storm, and it was up just southwest of Waco. So I called the office and said, I won't be back this afternoon. I'm going storm chasing. Took off up Highway 317, State Highway, and went up to Moody. And I took Farm Market Road off toward where the storm was. The sky was black in that direction. Up the hill, around the turn, and there was the first tornado of the day on the ground. I eventually was within about a mile of it.
Storms actually initiated up just south of the Waco area early in the afternoon along a weak frontal boundary up there. The storms drifted to the southwest, and it eventually became a supercell and produced a tornado.
I was surprised that it was moving in that direction, but as it turns out, that's the direction almost all of the tornadoes that day moved. I was crossing the dam. I saw out of the corner of my eye a funnel coming down from the cloud, and I looked down below the spillway, and there were great big pecan trees coming up out of the ground, being thrown up by the tornado.
Jim Spencer, TV meteorologist, was keeping his eyes on the storm and gathering his team for on-air coverage.
Got into work, there was already a swarm of tornadoes. I'd call it a swarm. Several tornadoes were already on the ground around the Waco area, and they were clearly building to the south and southwest. So we had an opportunity to really get set up and get prepared for it.
I moved on down to southwest, just southwest of Salado, and just west of I-35, and there was what I would call a pencil-thin tornado that had just developed. So I decided it was time to go to Gerald. And I got to Gerald, got off the interstate. The city's fire department siren was sounding over and over and over, because that little pencil-thin tornado had morphed into a multi-vortex tornado.
It was about that time that we went wall to wall with our coverage that day and started warning people that there were tornadoes on the ground.
So we did have some reports from emergency managers at the time and amateur radio at the time that there was a tornado on the ground. There was about a 10-minute lead time on the tornado warning for the community of Gerald.
Where I was, pieces of roofing material, 2x4s and things started falling out of the sky, and I decided it was time for me to go on south. I kept trying to catch up with the storm and arrived in Cedar Park, which is northwest of Austin, right after a tornado had gone through there. That's the tornado that sliced open the roof of the Albertsons store. And the roads were blocked with debris, trees down, power lines down, and that was the end of my chase that day. I had a police scanner in my truck, and I was surprised as I sat and listened that the Department of Public Safety dispatcher was sending all available troopers to Gerald. And it dawned on me that something bad had happened at Gerald that I could not see.
In fact, something very bad had happened. The tornado, with over 261-mile-an-hour winds, hit the Double Creek subdivision, killing 27 people, debarked trees, pulled grass from the ground, killed 300 head of cattle, and tossed dozens of vehicles more than a half a mile.
Catastrophic damage where it took 33 homes in that subdivision and wiped them clean off the foundation. There was nothing left of those homes. Typically, you see that in very catastrophic tornadoes where you have wind speeds in excess of 200 miles an hour.
The intensity of tornado outbreaks is increasing, with a greater number of tornadoes in each outbreak. The tornado is only one of Mother Nature's wicked sides. When we come back, a look at an even wickeder side of Mother Nature. Central Texas is home to the Hill Country, the Guadalupe River Basin, and it's also the flash flood capital of the world.
There are several ingredients that come into play. Number one, the topography of the area, especially in the hill country, and the nature of the soil leads to very quick runoff of rainfall. Number two, we can get very intense rainfall that falls across this region due to our proximity to the Gulf. And then third, the population boom that's taken place in this region. You start putting more people into an area that is prone to flash flooding, and you're going to get more fatalities.
The area around San Antonio is a favorite of Mother Nature's wickedness. It's littered with extreme rainfall records dating back to 1913. 1987 was one of those years. The area had been hit hard with flooding in May and June, nearly 18.5 inches of rain in just 30 days. The ground was saturated. On a muggy July night, the wickedness came again, rumbling like a heartless phantom, dropping 12 inches of rain that poured into the Guadalupe River. The phone rings at the home of David Villarreal, news photographer.
It was pouring rain. So home at sleep, and I get a call from the assignments desk saying, hey, there's floods up in Comfort, in the Hill Country, go to the heliport and get ready to depart and go out there and cover the floods.
It was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and we just decided to wait till the sun came up to go up, and and film the biannual flooding of the Guadalupe River.
Now, we didn't have much information, so we just kind of had to go up there and wing it and see scope it out and see what was going on. It took about an hour to get up there because we had to dodge a few storms. Mike's flying, and I'm sitting in the back looking out the window, kind of snoozing off, and I noticed a couple of buses coming down from a hill.
It looked like they were attempting to cross the river at a low water crossing. They also looked like they were turning away from the river, so we orbited there a couple of times and then just went on upstream and looking for more flood damage, not knowing that we had just turned our tail to two buses that were about to get swept away.
About 10 minutes later, I noticed there's a trooper down there flagging us. I told Mike, I said, hey, that guy urgently is trying to get our attention. He did this corkscrew maneuver. That helicopter, he just dropped it, circled down, and landed within seconds. It was incredible.
So we landed next to him, and he said, hey, there's a report back down at the Herman and Sons crossing that kids are in the water and they're screaming. We got him on board, went back down there, and there was nothing to see.
But a DPS helicopter had just arrived and was positioning himself to hover over some trees. And we thought maybe he's just observing. Suddenly we see a rope going down.
Until we started looking closer. And there were kids clinging on trees in groups of 5 or 6.
Well, we had to circle around a couple of times, and it wasn't until the wake of the blades kind of pushed the branches aside that you could see the kids clinging on there.
There was also a DPS helicopter who had just gotten a rope to one kid and had brought him out of the water and was putting him on dry land. So we landed right next to him.
When they got on the ground, I ran to him. I wanted to get his reaction as he told the first responders what had happened.
That's when we got the first indication of just how big a problem that was going on.
And suddenly we're thrown into this dangerous situation where we had to do something.
The news team, with a firefighter on board, went into action. They had become a rescue team. Quickly, they found a girl and brought her to safety. They brought a second girl to safety. Then a radio call came in. Another girl was in the water. The team was back in the air within seconds.
She was floating down the river. Mike was like homed in on her. The firefighter jumped out, but he was still on the rope, so he couldn't quite reach out to get her. And I threw the rope at her several times. And then at some point, she gets it. I had to scream at Mike, because it's so loud with the blades going, whipping, and the sound of the engine.
When you're down low on the river, that's a whole different scene down there in terms of turbulence. It has its own turbulence. You're just working overtime on the control.
Eventually, the girl let go of the rope while still in the water, floated down, and we couldn't get her.
We had to brake for gas. At this time, we're running low on gas. I was 5 minutes into the 20-minute low fuel warning light, so I was pushing it.
The girl, Melanie Finley, had grabbed a rope from a DPS helicopter, but couldn't hold on.
We tried desperately to get her, and it just wasn't our day, you know.
The raging waters of the Guadalupe River claimed 10 lives that day, despite the efforts of the rescuers.
But if it wasn't for Mike and his way of flying that helicopter, Mike's heart's in the right place.